Blog Talk Radio.
Carol the Coach. Sex, love, and relationships. We talk about it here.
Carol the Coach. Compassion with contemporary relevance.
I am a psychotherapist. I can be your personal life coach, and I can help you with your issues. There are no problems too small or too big. You can talk about anything.
Speaker, columnist, radio TV host, and commentator. Carol the Coach brings messages of wellness and empowerment within reach of everyday people every day.
Almost 5 years ago, I lost my soulmate in an accident. He was killed in a plane crash. Life just, for me, has seemed to stop.
There are groups all over the city. I teach one. It is a specific way to start thinking so that you shift how you see the world, which then shifts your energy, and then you feel better and you actually see things differently.
Carol the Coach, always available too at carolthecoach.com.
Now I've got Russell on the line.
I'm 47 years old. I'm a truck driver. I'm married. I have a wife in San Francisco.
Okay.
I haven't been home in 6 months. My thing is, I don't know if I have a sex addiction or what the problem is. Why do I want what I can't have? And as soon as I can have it, I don't want it anymore.
You're right on target when you say, I don't know if I have a sexual addiction. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. And you know what? That's my specialty, Russell. So you're at the right place. Continue.
I meet women online, and I'm in a different part of the country. I travel all 48 states, so I love sex.
I hear self-esteem issues. You never felt good enough, and you didn't feel like you were getting what you should have then, and you're reenacting that now. Do you want to change that about yourself?
You get what you need. Oh.
Yeah, that is such an important question. Whenever we're talking to addicts, we have to really identify what their willingness level is. Because when there is a willingness level, it is so important to be able to hang tight with them and figure it all out. Hi, I'm Carol Jurgensen-Sheep, and I am glad that you're with us. One of the things that I know is that you probably are hurting right now. Something in your life isn't going well. Maybe you've just come clean with the addiction, or maybe things are not going as well as you'd like. Now, if you're one of the addicts that, boy, you so badly want this, but you don't know how to get it, then I'm going to ask you to hang tight, because we're going to be talking about a very specialized technique that one of our CSATs has learned. Clients who seem to be relationally having difficulty. Let's just say that. And when they're relationally having difficulty, they may have attachment issues. Attachment can happen from trauma in childhood, from neglect, and it's a very intense experience that can cause real rupturing. When we talk to partners, they have now experienced an attachment rupture because of what they thought they had, what they wanted to have, and what they fear they can't have. Well, so many men never had the connection they needed to get healthy. And so, what do you need? What do you need to get healthy? What relationships have not worked in your life? Do you have a mother that rejects you for being gay? Do you have a father that walked out on you as a child? Did you have siblings that bullied and abused you? These are all, I don't want to say common occurrences, but I will say that they happen, and they happen with quite a bit of regularity. And so what do you need? What do you want? And what can you do to create healthier attachments. And that is what our CSAT, Aaron Tempel, is going to be talking about today. This should be interesting. I'm an EMDR therapist, and I got to tell you, I didn't know there was an attachment certification. Although Laurel Parnell, the woman that he's trained with, I've trained with her too on addiction out of Chicago. So I really can't wait to dialogue with him. So let me tell you a little bit about my life. I am so excited. I am eager to have this week done. And the reason why is I committed to having my book done by the 31st of October. And so I have been working like a banshee. Now, the truth of the matter is I have been working like a banshee, and I really, absolutely know that I will have it done. I thought I'd have it done yesterday, and then you know what a writer does? You get it done, or almost done, and you think about 3 other chapters you need to include, or 3 other ideas. And so you're working on making it better before it's even gotten finished. But that's okay, because I know that it is going to be an incredible book. Oh, you want to know what that is, I'm sure. This book is about IRCM, and you've heard me talk about it before. It's the Early Recovery Couples Empathy Model. But I know that so many couples can't find the right therapist. They don't have the amount, they don't have the money. They live in Africa, and there's nobody around that understands sex addiction or partner betrayal. And so I wanted this book to be for couples to begin to do this work. And if they've got a therapist, to have the therapist support them through the work. Now, the other thing I wanted, I'm starting a whole, what would I call it? I'm starting a whole situation, a whole new wave of therapy. Well, it's not really therapy. It's early recovery couples work. I am starting this empathy model and early recovery couples work to get addicts and partners through the 3 stages of partner betrayal. And that is so important. And therapists don't know how to do it, and I do. So I said, okay, there's not anybody in the world that I know of that knows how to do this the way I do, in part because I wrote Help or Heal, and so I've gotten so much feedback about that book. And so I decided to combine the Help or Heal model with the IRCM model, Early Recovery Couples Empathy Model, and walk clients through the stages of relational repair. It's been amazing. I so love the idea of being able to put it in your hands to begin to do the work. Some of the exercises are from Help or Heal, but I've now adapted and adopted it in a way that serves the couple. So that's always a good thing, right? And if you're not a couple, you probably get sick of me talking about couples, but I know that that's where my heart is. But don't leave my podcast because of it. And I got to tell you, I am going to start putting these videos, my podcasts, on YouTube. I was with 4 colleagues doing it on Friday, and I thought, you should do that too, Carol. You need to do this so that you can reach out to your community visually too. So I didn't know when I started today that I was going to do it, but I am interviewing Aaron Tempel on Zoom. I find that we don't talk over each other as much. So hopefully this episode will be on my YouTube channel. And maybe I'll even set up a separate subsidiary channel. I don't know. I don't even know if that word subsidiary works for that. But, boy, it sounded official, didn't it? So I'm really excited. My book will be done. You know, I'm leaning into retirement. I'm leaning right outside because I'm in Florida right now. And as soon as I'm done with this podcast, I've ended my day early, and I am going to the beach. I'm going to do my walk on the beach. I already did my walk this morning. But it's like it's time to relax a little bit. So what am I doing? I started the certification program. I'm writing a book, and then I'm going to relax. Do you think I can relax? That's the question. I relax. What do you think? You know, the truth of the matter is that's what I really badly want to do. I want to relax and lean into retirement and see couples and workshops and have groups. And I just want to see more people, but I want to condense it so that I have more time for me. And I know I have your support in that, don't I? Okay, well, I don't know where my guest is, but I am certainly thinking that he will be on in just a few minutes. You know, we as clinicians can't always guarantee that we're going to be available right at the time and the date that we're supposed to appear. So this is an interesting guy because I think he's going to move to Indianapolis. And if I end up doing my thing, then what I know to be true is that I can pass on my clients to him. Won't that be amazing, right? So I'm just going to send him a little email that says, come on to the podcast. I'm waiting. And hopefully he's not having any trouble. Now, if you are an addict who does not have anybody in your life, it's a lot harder for you to practice the skills that you need to make your life happen, right? And yet, being single is really probably one of the most freeing opportunities to work on you. I mean, maybe you're single and you've got kids, so you have them every other week, but maybe you're single and you don't. Maybe you're single and young and you haven't even gotten married yet. Maybe you're single like me, who didn't marry till she was 42, maybe. And that's plenty of time to do your reading and meditating and journaling. Is it not? I mean, it absolutely is. So, I just realized I forgot to record this. So I'm going to do my best to record.
Recording in progress.
There we go. I'm going to do my best to help you to learn what you need to do to heal. So if you're an addict, I want you to connect. I want you to get with other people who have the same issues so that you can all help each other and that you're not alone, right? That's what I want for you. And I want you to find a sponsor or a mentor that can help you through this process. That is really important. It is so important for you to be able to have people that are in good recovery show you how they did it. And then I want you to be able to read whatever literature is available to you that supports the group that you're in. You know, Every Man's Battle has its own book. The Seven Pillars has its own book. We all know that Sex Addicts Anonymous has the green book. Sexaholics Anonymous has the white book. But do read the book and go through the steps. Go through the work. Okay. So I can see what is going on with Aaron. He can't get in. It says that he has a different meeting. So I'm going to work on that right now as we speak. And what I believe to be true is that, wow, I know that we can make this work together. You know, if you do support, your own recovery by, if you will, figuring out a way to be around people that know what this all is like, you will just do amazing work. And you won't do it alone. And you won't reinvent the wheel. It is so hard when you have to reinvent the wheel. Okay. So the truth of the matter is, you want to make it easier on yourself because this is hard stuff, and you know it, right? Okay. Let me make sure I've given him the right number. He's coming on in 3 minutes. I don't know what the heck is going on, but Zoom? Well, no, it wasn't Zoom today. It was FaceTime. I couldn't FaceTime my clients. It just rang and rang and rang, and they were waiting there for me. And then I said, well, you call me. And we had to do it the old-fashioned way, which we had to do Zoom. A lot of people like FaceTime because they're actually calling from their phones, and it makes it easier for them. Okay, what are the other 5 tools that you need to practice? You need to go to a CSAT, a certified sexual addictive therapist, and you need to get into a sex addiction group. That can be so helpful. And what else do? You pray, meditate, or journal, something that holds you introspectively. And then after that, you read about the brain, you read about your sexual addiction, because that brain is what's causing this problem. It's not your genitals, it's your brain. And last but not least, you do accountability, right? You absolutely find tools that help you, whether that's polygraphs, GPSs, covenant eyes. Don't do it alone. You don't need to. All right. So those are the 10 tools. And now we will talk to Aaron, and we'll get to find out what he has to say in his world. Okay. So I'm so happy that we figured out a way to make this work, because I'm so interested in attachment theory and EMDR and how do you target that. So Aaron Tempel, welcome to Sex Help with Carol the Coach.
Hi, thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
All right. Well, so, you are a CSAT who has gotten a specialization with EMDR where you actually focus on the attachment ruptures. And I want you to explain to our listening audience a little bit about that. How'd you get into this work, Aaron?
So how I got into the EMDR world is, it's interesting because they're kind of, I don't say one and the same, but I was working on my CSAT when I began doing EMDR training. EMDR has always been something I was interested in, but timing was not something I could, pull off. And then the pandemic happened, so I was really thinking, well, I'm probably not going to do any training on this because of, the nature of, I want to be able to do EMDR in person, and I wasn't sure what that was going to look like. And then I came across a colleague talked to me about this EMDR training that was known as Attachment Focused EMDR through the Parnell Institute. And I knew nothing about it, but just the title alone, really piqued my interest because of the amount of just attachment wounding, and, most people who are struggling with sex addiction and even betrayal trauma, there's attachment wounds and attachment and relational trauma. So I'm like, well, what better modality or what better focus than attachment focus to treat this? So I did the training all virtually, and it was mind-blowing, and that was about a year ago now. So that's kind of what got me into the EMDR world as far as a CSAT goes.
So it was this colleague that exposed you to that, and I am an EMDR therapist also, so I get, how we have to target a certain area. Tell me a little bit about what you learned from Laurel Parnell. How did she help you to do this in a different way than we've been learned for regular EMDR?
Yeah, so it was, in Laurel's training, she's very much honoring of Francine Shapiro and the standard protocol and kind of understanding the foundations and the roots. And the deviation, or I don't know if you want to call it a deviation or the addition of other procedures or protocols, I don't think it's too different than I would assume most EMDR practitioners already operate. The main differences, or the main thing I learned, rather, is the use of utilizing resources through an intervention Laurel Parnell created that she titles Resource Tapping, seen in there's a book called Tapping In, but there's also other resources she's kind of created about this, where, without kind of going into too much of a lecture here, that we utilize the bilateral stimulation that EMDR uses, but kind of through a tactile, so to literal tapping, like tapping on your body with your hands, kind of alternating rhythmic, while using some kind of guided imagery and focus on certain figures. So the core 4 figures that I'm trained to utilize are peaceful place, wise figure, nurturing figure, and protective figure. So essentially we're focusing, while we're tapping, focusing on those qualities, a place that has peace or represents peace, a figure, whether real or imaginary, animal, some sort of being that has a nurturing quality, and then another one for a protective quality, and another one for a wise quality. And really what we're doing there is really multifaceted. But one, I notice, especially in my work with sex addicts primarily, is when I hear their attachment stories or their trauma stories, their attachment trauma, they're missing one of those pieces, right? Whether it's nurturing or wisdom or peace. So by doing this, you're sort of creating that foundational neural pathway for them. And so that's the core of it. It also really is a good predictor of just how well they can engage in the EMDR, since you're sort of doing, the bilateral stimulation piece, just focusing on a more positive or adaptive experience rather than a traumatic memory or a symptom, so to speak. And that's been really instrumental, I think, in my work with sex addicts, is because it provides, like I said, that neural network layer, but also is just a great coping skill, right? It's a nice way to help them relax, to help move them through triggers.
Yeah, it is so interesting that obviously attachment issues run so very deeply. And what I hear you saying is he's taught you a protocol that helps them to access those 4 parts that they actually have inside themselves, but maybe have not been able to utilize because it was never nurtured or cultivated. Would you go over those 4 types again?
Absolutely. And how you put it is exactly what we're doing, right? These are a part of us, but they just weren't accessed or nurtured, or through trauma itself, it just never was able to get vitalized. So the 4 core ones. So when I say the 4 core, I mean before I do EMDR with any of my clients, I want them to be able to resource with these 4 resources. That certainly is not the limit, right? You can be very creative, which is also something I really like about this, is you can be very creative in other resources, which I can talk about later. So peaceful places, usually I find most people can do pretty easily, right? It's just imagining a place that has peaceful qualities, whether they've been there before, whether it really exists, just something that they can connect to in a powerful way. So being on a mountaintop, being on the beach, looking at, into the stars on a night, something like that. And again, you just kind of incorporate the BLS, and that they can go from there. The next was nurturing. So, and this is probably the hardest one. So I work with primarily sex addicts, primarily male sex addicts, and I find this one is probably the harder one for them, even just understanding what nurturing means in this context, which already tells me a lot, right? It tells me that there's this missing nurturing piece. But again, the idea is just to imagine a figure, so real or imaginary, deceased, never met before, animal, religious figure, mythological figure, that just represents nurturing. And nurturing in a safe way. I never want my clients to pick someone or a figure that could be problematic for them, right? If their mother is maybe a part of their trauma story, I wouldn't want them to pick their mother as a nurturing figure in this. And the same kind of protocol goes for the other 2, just picking someone, real or imaginary, that has protective qualities. And I find protection is really interesting too, whether we're thinking protective as in like a turtle, like defensiveness. So a turtle can be defensive, right, or protective of itself. Or I use this example as like a mama bear, right, defensive in a very, kind of offensive way, repelling kind of way. So both either or work great to make, I think, someone feel kind of that sense of protection, that some figure is willing to shield me or push a threat away. And then wise figure, someone, again, that represents wisdom or has wise qualities. And again, the goal is to just activate those kind of resources within themselves, but also, with working with sexual addiction, there's so much shame, right? Both from the acting out itself and also how they got there. And shame typically robs. It's hard to be creative or joyful when shame is present. And I find the activity of even identifying figures as creative and it's like almost fun. It's lighthearted. It just accesses a different part of the brain than these heavy, topics or shame-based topics. So not only do I think it activates these systems, it allows them to just access a different part of their mind or brain they typically wouldn't access because of that shame.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And so now I know how these trainings go because I've had to do them too. And typically we have to do our own work because we all can relate to some part of the work that we're learning, right? So just for our listening audience, if you don't mind, can you share with them who did you access out of the 4?
Sure. So, yeah, you're exactly right. We had the training was very much you learn it, you watch it happen, and then you do it, have it done to you, and you watch other participants do it. So I did a lot of EMDR over those 3 days. So for example, some of my figures I used and continue to use even now if I'm just struggling with anxiety or I can't sleep. So my peaceful place is my childhood home. We lived in lived in a woods, so it's just me walking out there in the woods. And it's something that I can just very sensory-based get into, the smells, the sounds. So it's a very deep experience for me. My nurture, so the more that you identify, the better. That way you're more access. So I did a few for each. So my nurturers, they've shifted over time, but my grandmother was one of them. My dog was one of them. So again, you can kind of I like the creativity side of it. My protectors were a couple friends of mine, and, you know, for various reasons. One was more for strength. One was more for almost like, I can get you out of any situation sort of, you know, feeling. So there's that protection of I can be safe with this person. And then wisdom was, I believe, it's been a minute. Wisdom was my wife, and Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. So I kind of had a little spread of people in my life, animals, as well as, you know, fictional characters. And it really was a nice experience to do that before the processing itself, as well as just to utilize it, you know, for anxiety, for, you know, stress. I did some tapping before this podcast today, so, you know, it's a helpful kind of regulator.
Yeah, it's a regulator, and it resources and grounds you. And one of the things that I know is whenever we make conscious a resource for whatever we're dealing with, fear, anxiety, sadness, grief, anger, we will end up proceeding with much more confidence and regularity. And so you did some tapping, you got in touch with your resource, and you came on the show much more confidently as a result. And isn't it interesting that EMDR is like that? There are some very simplistic things that people can do even at home. I mean, Francine Shapiro, she wrote Getting Past Your Past for clients to learn these techniques to feel better about their trauma, their emotion dysregulation, and their life in general. So you are trained in this very specialized field, and yet they can go to that book and get some resources that would help to ground them before they got to you, right?
Absolutely.
And so you call this AF-EMDR. So it's Attachment Focused EMDR. And it really is for individuals struggling with sexual addiction or betrayal trauma. Tell me how a partner might use AF-EMDR to better his or her life.
Sure. So I will say this is mostly through, so again, my experience is mainly with addicts. I'm trained to work with partners. I just think through just the nature of who comes to see me individually, it's mainly them. However, I have my colleague who referred me works with partners, and collaborating with her, and also just kind of doing my own research around it, I can see how it could be beneficial for partners specifically. So I think one of the ways is really, again, creating this sense of safety for them through the resourcing and through the EMDR itself, especially after discovery. So when things can be so emotionally charged and overwhelming and feeling chaotic and all of that, emotional internal experience, and, rightfully so, it provides, I think, this stabilization, this touch point of just being able to regulate and starting to move through that healing process, whether with or without the betraying partner. And again, those resource figures, just bringing that to the forefront really can be beneficial there. Your comment on confidence is really important, because when you think of attachment wounding, right, when our attachments are damaged or ruptured and there's not that repair, there isn't this, well, I'm not going to go outside, I'm not going to push myself, I'm not going to put myself at risk because I don't feel emotionally safe. So if I can feel that safety, then I can feel confident to try new things, to kind of leave the home base, so to speak, a little bit further in kind of an emotional way. So that EMDR, or even just that resourcing, can be really powerful, just providing that confidence and a little bit of that security place. And I've really seen it in when I do disclosures, when the partner will even share in the disclosure, like, yeah, like EMDR helped me get to this place where I can be here and bear witness to this, right? It doesn't change that it can be very emotional and challenging to hear, but just because they have that confidence, they've got that security emotionally from either their trauma work or even just the resourcing, has been so really powerful just for me to see kind of as the other therapist, and just seeing how that affects, I think allows them to also access their own recovery, more quickly as well. And, we all have our own stories, and a lot of partners also have attachment wounds prior to this relationship, right? Whether it's previous relationships or from their family of origin. So again, that work could also really help in just their overall healing.
Got it. So let me ask you something. Do you see this attachment-focused EMDR being better for the addict or for the partner, or does it matter?
Really don't think it matters, right? Because, again, the core of what we're targeting is this attachment wounding, right? This feeling of emotional unsafety and even physical unsafety at times. And I think it could work for, I don't think it's better suited for one over the other. And that's just sort of my experience, and also just my theory of it is really, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to provide for my clients is I'm holding a safe space with them. They could come see me for nothing related to sexual addiction. And I think, attachment-focused EMDR may be appropriate depending on kind of what they're wanting to work on, which is one reason I like it. It can be very specialized and specific on working on one issue, but it could also be more generalized, because we all have those stories. We all have those rupture repair wounds to some extent, whether it's, a small, not to minimize, but like when you think of little T trauma versus capital T trauma, those chronic shamings versus a one single incident that may be totally unrelated to acting out, it still kind of accesses that that sense of safety and self-confidence and the beliefs that we then reform or challenge or change to be more adaptive for those people. So I don't think that, and again, I will also totally say, I know what I don't know is, I know I'm early in the practicing of this, but in my experience, no, I don't think one is more beneficial than the other.
Okay, very good. Now, let's just one more time for anybody who got here late or who didn't understand, and now it's becoming clearer, because this sounds so technical, but it is not necessarily technical. Yes, you have to be trained as a professional, but for the client, what can they expect? They walk into the office with an AF-EMDR therapist, and what happens next?
So what happens next is it sort of, at least from my experience, it depends on kind of what they're looking for. If they come in saying, hey, I saw you, I want to do EMDR specifically, the ground running. If they're just coming and saying, hey, I am experiencing this distress, I'm engaging in behaviors I don't want to engage in, I don't know what to do, I still bring it up. I like to be very honest with my clients. Like, this is what's in my toolbox. You don't have to use it. I think you should be aware, but this is not the only way to engage in this healing. And that's part of, I think, the attachment focused EMDR already is it's so client-centered, right? I am the navigator. They are the captain, right? I can show them routes on how to get where they want to go. It's up to them to decide that they want to go there or not. So much of the initial work, and I would imagine this is how most clinicians are at this point, right? Being client-centered, making the clients feel safe, having a good therapeutic relationship, because that is, right, attachment healing in itself. So that's kind of the more generalist kind of answer, but to get into, like, what do the next steps look like, it is a little formulaic, which is, I think, nice, right? It can help because even as I learned about all this, I'm like, oh, this is overwhelming. I don't understand it until I go through it. So, but it's pretty straightforward, which is really, I think, helpful for anyone, wanting to do this is just like anything else. What do you want to get out of this, right? What symptoms do you have, right? Whether it's negative beliefs, intrusive thoughts, unwanted behaviors, somatic pain, right? Whatever. That's what I think is great about this too. It doesn't have to be like, if it's not a PTSD symptom, I can't do it, right? It can be very varying. So just it gives those people the freedom to choose, I want it for this reason. Great. And then we just build a roadmap together. Like what memories do you think are associated with that? And it's okay if you don't know any, right? That's the beauty of this too. Your brain does the work. You don't have, it's not you consciously doing the work. So we kind of build a roadmap of maybe memories that are at least connected to those symptoms or just emotionally charged memories that may be totally unassociated, right? And through that
Aaron,
go ahead.
Can I ask you to give them an idea of a memory that is linked or attached and then a memory that might be unrelated?
Sure. So let's say the symptom that they're kind of thinking of, like, listen, like let's think from the sex addiction spectrum, right? I have intrusive, or let me back up. Just a really core negative belief, right? I'm not good enough, right? I hate myself, something like that. And they can maybe tie it to, I heard that from my father, right? I remember this memory of, I struck out at T-ball or I struck out at baseball or what have you, and my dad just literally just like yelled at me and just told me I'm not good enough, right? That's a very concrete, like, yes, you can make that connection. The literal phrase is the literal belief. That's very much connected. So that might be like, great, we will consider that as a memory to target and process. Same belief, right? I'm not good enough. A memory that may not be connected at all, right? Or maybe not on the surface is maybe there was this experience of not being chosen for an activity and, or chosen last in like a team activity, right? So again, maybe not overtly related, but there's that sense of like, well, I'm not good enough to be chosen here. And let's say that memory kind of leads into, well, not only was I not chosen for that activity, I also didn't play that well at the activity because I already felt kind of bad about myself, which then further reinforced that belief, right? And then I got home and then, I didn't finish my homework in time, right? So it's this kind of just chained experience, but it's conceptualized as that one memory as I wasn't picked for this team event. And you would argue we've all maybe had that experience, right? But for some reason, that's the charged one. That one got stuck. That one is where your brain went to. And that's okay. There's not a right or a wrong answer here.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, what would you advise for the average sex addict or partner who's doing good work, and they are, you know, he's doing his recovery, she's working on herself, and yet they recognize that there's a fear of reattaching because of the trauma that has occurred. For her, she's afraid to trust again. I mean, it really was a significant relational trauma, and it was a rupture. And for him, he's afraid he won't do it well enough, and so he is not as confident as he would like to be in reestablishing that bond. Are there therapeutic resources with AF-EMDR that our listeners would have access to?
Absolutely. So, again, what I really like about this is you can be so creative. I simply just leave it up to my clients. What do you need, right? I want to be able to trust. I'm afraid to. Okay, so you're wanting confidence, or maybe they're wanting faith, or they're wanting, you know, reassurance, whatever that need, that resource is. And then you ask, well, who could give that to you? Is there a figure you can think of that would represent faith, that would represent reassurance or confidence, right, or resiliency, right? There's this creativity, and then that becomes a resource to tap into for them, but also I think could also be a nice target for EMDR. So I think people on their own can do the resourcing, kind of what they need, but even in the therapeutic session or the therapy session itself is processing the betrayal, right, for both people, right, for both the partner and for the addict, because it can blunt the edges of the shame for the addict, and then maybe blunt the edges of the betrayal for the betrayed partner. Again, not to write it off and make it neutral altogether, but just make it less emotionally charged so they can engage in their life as they want to. So within the marriage, can they securely get into that?
That makes so much sense. Now, I know that you currently work in a group private practice in Annapolis, Maryland, and this is your expertise: sex addiction, partner betrayal, unwanted pornography, and trauma resolution. Now, how can people get a hold of you if they're in that area and they'd like some of this AF-EMDR?
Sure. So I am currently the private practice I work for is Rogue River Counseling. You can look us up online at roguerivercounseling.com. We've got a few other therapists that are trained in AF-EMDR as well as going through the training. So it's just kind of we're moving towards utilizing that more. I can be directly reached at Aaron, AARONT, as in Thomas, at roguerivercounseling.com. However, like I said, all of our therapists are great, so utilizing them on our website is something that people can do as well.
Oh, great. And if they have questions, they could probably email you personally at Tempel, TEMPEL, AARON, Aaron, at gmail.com, correct?
Correct.
Okay, well, Aaron, it was so delightful to meet you in May, and I'm so sorry that it was rainy and you didn't get to do a boat ride, you and your lovely wife. But I am so looking forward to the work that you're doing, and because, it's not just about treating addiction and betrayal. It's about finding the resources to make it easier for our clients. And you are very devoted to this field. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. No, it was lovely to be here. It was lovely to meet you regardless of the rain. And I just really thank you for having me here.
Okay, well, you take care of yourself, and you've definitely perked my interest. I'll look for one of Laurel's Attachment Focused EMDR trainings, because that's what I do, is I really work hard at attaching people. I was just telling our listening audience, I'm going to be done with my book this week on Help Them Heal, which teaches the couple how to do some of these exercises to go through the work of relational repair. So what you talked about today is right up my alley, and I just thank you so much. You make it a good week.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye. So again, that was Aaron Tempel, who's a CSAT, who believes that attachment-focused EMDR really does increase the effectiveness of treatment for both sex addiction and partner betrayal. You know, it's kind of like what I said. I'm creating something because I know it works. Laurel is an amazing EMDR therapist, and she's just all over the world sharing the stuff that she has found to be successful. So make sure to find a specialist, would you? You've got to find a specialist who can treat the issues that you're experiencing. And as I say at the end of every show, you know, there will only be one of you at all times, so fearlessly have the courage to be yourself. We'll see you next week for more Sex Help with Carol the Coach.